Hi guys, Olive here. In today's Nonfiction November video, I would like to review Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt and its movie adaptation. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is a true crime nonfiction book that was published in 1994 by Random House. When it was first published, it was a runaway hit, spending 216 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and it was also nominated in 1995 for the General Nonfiction Pulitzer Prize. The book, and also the movie, but we'll get into that in a moment, tells the story of a murder that was perpetrated by the very influential and intensely wealthy antiques dealer Jim Williams. One evening during an argument, he shot and killed a young man who lived with him, worked for him, and with whom he had a sexual relationship. For several reasons, all of which are made pretty clear in this book, Williams is charged with first-degree murder, and author John Berendt, who is an acquaintance of Williams, follows this case and interacts in often vital ways with those involved, and then he goes on to give us a full account of that experience in this book. Now, although this book does go on to become a work of true crime, it's not obvious starting out that it's going to turn into one. It is nearly halfway through this book before the crime even takes place, with most of the first half of the book focusing on the southern U.S. city of Savannah, Georgia, where all of these events take place. John Berendt fell in love with the city of Savannah and lived there for several years. So in addition to getting the up-close and personal experience with the incident that this book is most well known for, the first half of this book unveils this beautiful city with colorful characters that's ready to welcome you in for a drink, but is ready to show you the door if you're looking to change a single thing. He gives you some of the history of this city, he sketches you a portrait of its regal historical beauty, and he introduces you to some huge personalities that begin to occupy a very big space in his life and subsequently this book. First, you have the lovable swindler Joe Odom and his never-quite wife Mandy. There's also down on his luck Luther, who is constantly clutching at a vague threat to poison Savannah's entire water supply. And most memorably, there is the incomparable drag queen and drama lover, the Lady Chablis. Berendt's introductions to these individuals, his nestling into Savannah society to get an inside look, and his well-placed historical divulgences make up this crucial first half of the book, and nothing is lost for it. But when you call something a true crime book, you expect to get at least a hint of it earlier in the book than we do. That leads me to a point I need to make about the structure of this book. It feels nothing like nonfiction. At the very beginning of the book, we are introduced to the eventual culprit of the crime, Jim Williams, but there's nothing really to indicate that he's going to become that important later on. Also, this is a really unique true crime book because Berendt is very involved in these events as they're unfolding. And that becomes clear in the way that he's telling the story, because he never removes himself from the story. I feel like in most true crime books, or at least modern true crime books, the author is separate from the story itself, and so they are capable of addressing you as the reader and giving you an idea of what's to come. Like in most true crime books, there's an introduction that's going to give a sweeping overview of the story and give you an idea of how the author is going to go about telling that story to you. There is none of that in this book, and I have to admit I was feeling a little bit lost without it. I feel like without that author presence guiding you through the book, it felt a little bit directionless. But I do also have to say that that absence of the author presence also made this book read like a novel. It felt like fiction, which I suppose could explain why it was such a big hit and could certainly make it a good gateway book for fiction readers looking to get into nonfiction. I do know that this book is referred to as a nonfiction novel, something like In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Also something I need to note at this point, I'm not going to give any precise details about what exactly I'm talking about so as to not spoil anything for you, but in an interview that I heard with the author, he did admit that he took a few liberties with the truth in order to construct this narrative. I will admit, I can see why he changed those elements. It certainly does make it a more compelling story, and nothing that he changed is anything major, but the fact that he changed anything at all leads me to doubt his experience in general. It's one of those things, like if you're willing to lie about those little things, how do I know you're not lying about any of the rest of it? And since he admitted that some of the things in this book aren't entirely true, is it still a piece of nonfiction? But I have feelings on both sides of the coin in this case, because despite the problems I had with this book, I had an absolute ball reading it. Although I was kind of confused by the lack of true crime elements in the beginning, I was absolutely captivated by Savannah and its residents. I could not get enough of them. And just like a lot of other people who read this book, I am now eager to visit Savannah. As I said earlier in the video, this book was tremendously popular when it came out. So much so that it earned its own movie adaptation that came out in 1997. I've gone on to watch this movie since finishing the book. I thought I would share some thoughts on it with you. This movie was directed by Clint Eastwood. It starred John Cusack as author John Berendt, known as John Kelso in the movie, and also starred Kevin Spacey as murderer Jim Williams. I'm going to start off with my gripes because I can't not, to be completely honest. I think the movie started off really strong and then turned into a mushy mess. Differing immediately from the book, the murder happens very early on in the film, with the subsequent investigation and trials being at the core of the movie experience, with only some of the characters and storylines from the book sprinkled in unevenly. I am not the kind of person who thinks that the book is always better than the movie. I think there are plenty of movies that are better than the book. But in order to make this particular book a movie, they had to do something that is unforgivable, in my opinion. They had to put author John Kelso, at the center of the investigation, having him doing work of the detectives and the lawyers. No, it doesn't make sense. It's not legal. Don't do that. Also, some of the most important people from the book, namely Joe Odom, receive little to no screen time. I thought the actor playing Joe Odom was wonderful. I just wanted more of him. And then some other characters are completely altered. Mandy, who is Joe's longtime girlfriend, becomes John Kelso's love interest in the movie. Why does there need to be a love interest in this movie? It's about a murder. I did think that the movie was fairly well casted overall, but the standout was 100% the Lady Chablis, because the real Lady Chablis played herself in the movie and did an amazing job, stole every scene that she was a part of. In the movie, she's included in the case more than she ever was in the book. Her role in the book is something entirely separate from the crime, but anything that got her more screen time was a-okay with me. But I think what ultimately made this movie adaptation a failure in my eyes was the fact that the city of Savannah, Georgia didn't feel like a character. So although it was lovely to see some of the landmarks that are discussed in this book on the screen right in front of your eyes, I felt that the city itself didn't sing through. John Berendt does a really great job in the book of giving you a feeling for what Savannah was like at this time, but he does even more than that. He gives you the history to show you how it got that way. In the book, you get the opportunity to see Savannah society from all angles, and you start to get an image for who these people really are. For instance, there is one Savannah resident who claims that he resigned from a particular organization. But then when John Berendt goes to a social gathering later in the book, you find out that he was actually kicked out. Also, especially at the beginning of the book, everyone's skepticism of John Berendt helps you get the vibe that this is a city with a very insular culture. The city is a beautiful hostess, but with several padlocks on her door. Not 1 ounce of that comes through in the movie, which unsurprisingly gravitates toward every sensational nugget from the book, including how Jim Williams turned to voodoo magic to try to swing the odds in his favor. It's typical Hollywood, and although you may enjoy your experience watching, if you want the best experience with this story, I highly, highly recommend you read the book instead. I'm not always a fan of things that are really, really popular, and I definitely did have some problems with the book, but it is highly deserving of the praise it has received over the past 24 years since publication. I thought it was great. Please tell me in the comment section below if you've read the book, if you've seen the movie, perhaps even both. I would love to know your thoughts. Or if you have any other general comments or questions, those can also go in the comment section below. Or if you'd like to reach me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media. The links to all of my profiles are linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I will see you in the next video. Bye.